It just went to show how powerful he used to be. Luckily, the three of them had whittled down a considerable amount of his blood qi earlier. Otherwise, it would have been an extremely dangerous battle for them. Inside the tightly shut grand hall, the lights of various secret techniques and artifacts flared blindingly. At the same time, these lights were accompanied by several groans and grunts. It didn't matter whether it was Black Crow Divine Monarch or Yang Kai's party. Both sides were covered in wounds in just a short period. Black Crow Divine Monarch's bloodlight scripture was extremely troublesome. All the injuries to his body would only cause his vitality to drop by a small margin, while even the most lethal and fatal injuries could not kill him. That was in stark contrast to the situation when Yang Kai and the two others were injured. The blood from their wounds seemed to be guided by some kind of invisible force, transforming it into blood mist that gathered around Black Crow Divine Monarch and poured into his body, vanishing from sight to become part of his strength. Yang Kai had the wit element power stemming from the essence of the immortal tree, as well as a very pure dragon clan bloodline flowing in his body. Therefore, his regenerative abilities were incredible, and his wounds healed very quickly. For this reason, the bloodlight scripture affected him the least. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for Pei Wenxian and Chu Huashang. It was hard to say exactly how much vitality they lost in such a short period, but their complexions were now extremely pale. Nevertheless, nobody retreated after things had come this far. That was because all three of them knew that only one side would survive the battle today. The slightest negligence or sign of weakness could bring about an irreversible and catastrophic outcome. Kill! Yang Kai's roar reverberated throughout the grand hall as his spear stabbed forward and space principles fluctuated wildly. The spear disregarded the barriers of space and stabbed towards Black Crow Divine Monarch's head, even though he was standing 1,000 meters away. Black Crow Divine Monarch narrowed his eyes and lifted his hands to push out a wall of blood qi. There was a loud explosion, and Yang Kai was sent flying by the impact. Similarly, Black Crow Divine Monarch was also thrown backwards. He spun lightly in midair and landed on the ground, glaring at Yang Kai with deep hatred as he viciously snarled, "Just you wait, Junior. Once this monarch replenishes his strength, he will return to fight you again." After saying that, he turned around and shot a blast of light behind him. Yang Kai felt his heart jump in horror as he witnessed this. He hurriedly stopped his body from flying backward any further and shouted, "Stop him! He's trying to escape." How could Pei Wenxian and Chu Huashang dare to hold back upon hearing those words? Meanwhile, Black Crow Divine Monarch's body seemed to have turned into a bottomless abyss that continuously devoured the blood qi. Yang Kai felt his entire body going cold with fear. The blood lake was definitely something Blood Monster Divine Monarch prepared for his inheritance disciple. After all, there was no point in inheriting his blood Dao inheritance and cultivating the bloodlight scripture if one did not have enough vitality. That was why he prepared this blood lake in advance. Yang Kai had not given much thought to this matter before, so it was not until this moment that he understood. All the water in the blood lake was formed from genuine fresh blood. Just how many people were sacrificed to fill such a large blood lake? As expected, Blood Monster Divine Monarch was not a good or kind man either. Spreading out his divine sense, Yang Kai investigated his knowledge sea and body, but despite checking every corner of himself thoroughly, he did not find anything. Thus he scowled fiercely. In an attempt to confirm his conjecture, Yang Kai escaped to a location that was even further away and secretly hid himself. That was not all. He also summoned the Shadowless Veil and covered himself with it. The Shadowless Veil was something that could even fool the perception of a mid-rank open heaven realm master, who was not actively searching for him. Although it had its limits, it was still an amazing treasure. In less than 6 hours though, Yang Kai saw a blood cloud rushing through the sky from the distant horizon at high speed. Black Crow Divine Monarch shouted from afar before he even arrived, "Boy, cease your futile resistance. You will never escape from this monarch, even if you flee to the ends of the world." Yang Kai was furious, and was now certain that Black Crow Divine Monarch had placed some sort of mark on him. Otherwise, How could the latter accurately determine his whereabouts twice? It was just that he had no idea what kind of mark it was, so he had no way of removing it. Yang Kai initially planned to avoid the old dog until the blood monster cave heaven closed, as everything would be over after that. Unfortunately, it would seem that he was far too naive. In that case, he could only go all out and fight. This time around, he would not have Chu Huashang or Pei Wenxian with him. It would literally be a one-on-one battle. Yang Kai remained hidden from view. Judging by the first time his whereabouts were exposed, Black Crow Divine Monarch could not determine his precise location despite the mark on his body, and only had a general idea of his location. Otherwise, Black Crow Divine Monarch would not have used those blood snakes to search for him. Yang Kai's conjecture turned out to be correct. It didn't take long for the blood cloud to arrive within 10 kilometers of Yang Kai's vicinity. The large face glanced about the surroundings for a while before its gaze fixed on the spot where Yang Kai was located. The blood cloud trembled slightly as numerous blood snakes emerged, and immediately disappeared out of sight after landing on the ground. Black Crow Divine Monarch then shouted, "Brat, don't say this monarch did not give you any chance. Although you embarrassed this monarch greatly, it does not change the fact that this monarch appreciates your abilities. I will spare your life if you come forward on your own initiative. Refuse, and it will be difficult for you to survive once this monarch captures you." Yang Kai turned a deaf ear to those words. This guy relentlessly chased me for over 10,000 kilometers just to kill me. Who would believe him when he utters such nonsense at this time? Chi chi chi. A series of noises came from Yang Kai's surroundings. It was the slithering sounds of countless blood snakes moving around. Just listening to those sounds made one's scalp tingle in fear. Before he could even stabilize his figure though, a bright light filled his vision from the front. He looked up and saw Yang Kai's spear piercing straight towards him, the great sun manifesting at its tip. I will die if I fail to block this attack. Panic filled his heart for a moment. Black Crow Divine Monarch had always held the upper hand in the fight earlier. No matter how hard Yang Kai, Pei Wenxian, and Chu Huashang fought back. Hence, he had not even panicked. Besides, he had Blood Monster Divine Monarch's Blood Dao inheritance, and cultivated the Blood Light scripture. As long as his injuries were not too severe, he would be able to quickly recover. However, this attack was different. Black Crow Divine Monarch was certain that not even his ashes would remain if this attack struck him head-on. He would be completely vaporized, to the point where nothing of him would remain. With death looming right before his eyes, Black Crow Divine Monarch immediately became eerily calm. 2 flashes of blood light rushed out from his body and entered his hands, transforming into his twin butterfly daggers. A raging fighting spirit erupted out of his body as he crossed his twin daggers above his head and shouted furiously. I never imagined that there would come a day when this monarch would be forced to go all out against a mere boy tens of thousands of years in the future. Brat, you have nobody but yourself to blame if you die at this monarch's hands. Yang Kai shouted a response upon hearing those words. Divine Monarch, I will not mourn your death either if you die. Ha ha ha. Black Crow Divine Monarch burst into laughter. Good, very good. As they spoke, the distance between them shortened quickly. Yang Kai urged the strength in his body to the limits, and even the Dao seal in his body began trembling slightly. Likewise, Black Crow Divine Monarch's vitality surged madly. Hong! An explosion rang out. At the same time, a huge and bright ball of light exploded. Black Crow Divine Monarch's twin daggers blocked the great sun. In that moment he attacked countless times. The knife shadows covered the entire sky, slashing down with incredible power in each stroke. At the same time, Yang Kai wielded his spear techniques to the extreme. They transformed into boundless spear shadows, and the dragon roars shook the sky continuously. The spear in his hand practically turned into a true dragon that devoured Black Crow Divine Monarch. Their figures passed by each other, and the light gradually faded. Black Crow Divine Monarch coughed up a mouthful of fresh blood and staggered unsteadily. Using his 2 daggers to steady himself against the ground, he barely managed to stop himself from falling. At this moment, the left side of his body was gone, and the wriggling internal organs in his abdomen could clearly be seen. It was just that these injuries were nothing under the profound effects of the bloodlight scripture. He had come back to life even after being sliced in half by the divine ability sealed within Pei Wenxian's identity token. So what were injuries like these in comparison? His flesh squirmed and blood gathered in that spot. The half of his body that he lost was soon regrew in the blink of an eye. On the other hand, Yang Kai stood motionless with the azure dragon spear in his hand. It was just that the great sun attached to the tip of the spear had vanished. The vicious attack just now had practically drained all the strength out of his body. It was not until this moment that countless blood arrows finally shot out from all over his body. Before his blood could land on the ground though, the golden blood arrows floated towards Black Crow Divine Monarch, as though guided by an invisible force, and were absorbed by him. That was not all. Yang Kai could clearly feel the fresh blood in his wounds being pulled towards Black Crow Divine Monarch. On the contrary, although Yang Kai's recovery abilities were indeed countless times stronger than the average cultivator, they paled in comparison to the extraordinary recovery abilities of Black Crow Divine Monarch. The spear shadows danced and fresh blood splattered everywhere. Every attack Yang Kai unleashed struck Black Crow Divine Monarch's vital points without fail. If it were anybody else, they would have been killed countless times by now. However, Black Crow Divine Monarch remained very much alive. He even kept up a steady stream of vicious mockery despite everything. In contrast, Yang Kai's injuries were becoming more and more severe. He had lost too much blood, and was feeling dizzy as a result. After saying that, his figure shifted slightly, and he rushed forward to come directly in front of Yang Kai. The twin daggers came slashing down from both sides as overwhelming murderous intent surged from him. Yang Kai raised his spear to parry, and in the next instant, there was a loud explosion. He could sense an overwhelmingly powerful force coming from above him, and even with his half-dragon body, he could not withstand the impact. His entire figure was pressed down by the force, so much so that he was almost kneeling on the ground. His vision went black again, and by the time it recovered, Black Crow Divine Monarch's face was practically right in front of him, grinning as he sneered, "Die!" Yang Kai grit his teeth and let out a roar. His spiritual energy erupted violently from within his knowledge sea, turning into a haphazard attack that blasted towards Black Crow Divine Monarch. Black Crow Divine Monarch's savage grin instantly stiffened in response, and even his eyes seemed to bulge, as though he received a huge shock. The terrifying pressure suddenly relaxed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yang Kai quickly steadied himself and swung his spear at Black Crow Divine Monarch. His attack sent the latter flying, and before Black Crow Divine Monarch could get further away from him, the Azure Dragon Spear had already thrust out hundreds of times in a row. Every single attack blasted out with heaven-destroying and earth-shattering power. Black Crow Divine Monarch was utterly powerless in the face of those attacks, and his body was smashed to pieces as a result. Yang Kai was stunned for a moment, as he had not expected such a change in the battle. It was out of desperation that he unleashed a soul attack just now. He simply wanted to relieve some of the pressure bearing down on him. But who could have known that he would strike Black Crow Divine Monarch's weakness with that attack? It caused the latter's strength to drop sharply, and even froze him on the spot for a moment. After pondering for a while, realization suddenly struck Yang Kai. Black Crow Divine Monarch was just a remnant soul in the first place. Moreover, he was severely injured inside Yang Kai's knowledge sea. Not to mention, he had been forced to separate a thread of his consciousness to create a diversion in order to escape. Afterward, he went on to possess Zhou Yi's body. Although he was successful in his attempt, it was not as simple as it seemed from the surface. Regardless of the circumstances, Zhou Yi was still an elite disciple of Great Thousand Bloodland, so his aptitude was not bad. Therefore, Black Crow Divine Monarch would definitely need to pay a price in order to possess his body. How strong could Black Crow Divine Monarch's soul be after overcoming all these obstacles? Before he could even say anything to her, his head tilted to the side, and he fell unconscious. Chu Huashang had been in the middle of treating her injuries when she was brought out of the small sealed world by Yang Kai. She initially felt confused about the situation, but then she turned around to see Yang Kai lying on the ground and covered in blood. His clothes were in tatters and numerous bone-deep wounds dotted his body. In addition, there was a gaping hole that penetrated his body from front to back at his waist. Thus, she couldn't help being shocked by the sight and called out in alarm, "Junior brother Yang! Junior brother Yang!" Rushing over, she knelt beside him, her complexion pale. She had no idea what he went through while she was recuperating from her injuries. However, judging from the extent of his injuries, it was definitely an extremely dangerous battle. She tremblingly placed a hand under his nose and discovered that he was still breathing, albeit faintly. Letting out a deep breath of relief, she slumped to the ground weakly. "I thought he was dead. I'm so glad he's still alive. But with injuries this severe." She reached out a hand and lightly brushed against those vicious-looking wounds, her body shivering lightly. Leaving aside how long it would take for him to heal from these injuries, there was no saying what kind of consequences he might suffer, even after fully recovering. She more or less had a grasp of Yang Kai's true abilities, and knew that not many people or monster beasts in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven could possibly force him to this extent. Could it be that Black Crow Divine Monarch was pursuing us? The moment that thought crossed her mind, she suddenly became agitated and anxious. She did not dare to remain in this place. Therefore, she hurriedly took out some topical healing medicine, tore open his clothes, and applied some of the medicinal liquid to his body. Afterward, she took out a robe from her own space ring and wrapped him in it. Lifting him onto her back, she then quickly ran off. Yang Kai vaguely felt his body moving up and down in his unconscious state. A fragrant scent entered his nose, enticing him sweetly. Furthermore, there was a soft and plump sensation pressing against his body. Something tickled his cheeks, almost as though a strand of hair was gently stroking his heartstrings. It was the very picture of a so-called tender love nest. For a time, he could not figure what kind of situation he was in, but just as he was about to get a clear look of his surroundings, a burst of pain erupted throughout his entire body, causing him to hiss in pain. "Junior brother Yang, are you awake?" Chu Huashang's voice entered his ears. She was out of breath, and her voice sounded weak. "En," he responded and opened his eyes to look. Only then did he realize that he was being carried on her back. Her hands were supporting his thighs, and she was leaning forward slightly while running quickly. Out of the 3 divine medicines that Yang Kai brought out of the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, 2 had to stay in Void Land, so naturally, Pu Bai Xiong was not willing to leave either. He was adamant about staying behind in Void Land to accompany Little Mushroom and the Bottle Gourd brothers. Therefore, Yang Kai had allowed him to do as he pleased. Who could have known that a divine monarch would possess somebody and come back to life inside the Blood Monster Cave Heaven? Who could have expected the situation would become so dangerous? Yang Kai had assumed that his strength was enough that he could run wild in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. At the very least, he would not be in any danger. I was too careless. No matter what, I have to bring a few grapes along with me next time for emergencies. "Junior brother, can we consider ourselves lovers after sharing life and death together?" Chu Huashang suddenly asked. "Lovers my foot." Yang Kai was rendered speechless by her. He had initially felt nervous being pursued by enemies, but the tense atmosphere vanished after listening to what Chu Huashang said. She pouted in an aggrieved tone. "I've never struggled so desperately for a man in my life." To which Yang Kai nodded. "This junior brother will keep in mind the life-saving grace you have shown me today, senior sister. I will never forget it." Chu Huashang giggled and replied lightly, "Junior brother also saved me back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Besides, I would have lost my life if you had not stopped Black Crow Divine Monarch earlier. Taking all these into account, you helped me more. Things like favors and life-saving graces can never be settled with numbers." "That's true." She leaned her head against his shoulder and nodded lightly. A short moment of silence later she said, "Junior brother put me down. You should escape on your own." Yang Kai was taken aback by her words. "What about you?" Her voice had weakened considerably as she muttered, "I'm afraid I can't go on any longer. I'm too tired. I think I'll take a little nap." His expression changed drastically. "Hold on, senior sister. You can't fall asleep." It was not until this moment that he noticed his palms were sticky. He lifted his right hand and saw that they were covered in bright red blood. His blood was golden, so this red blood undoubtedly belonged to her. Although they joined forces and managed to block Yin Xan Zhao's attack earlier, it was obvious that she had been injured at the time. Yang Kai swept his divine sense over her and discovered that she had a vicious wound on her waist. Moreover, her blood stained the ground in their wake. Martial Peak, Chapter 4265, Blood Monster Natives. After Yang Kai finished speaking, he carried Chu Huashang on his back once more and took several steps forward without even bothering to turn around. "Excuse me. Please continue your fight." Hong hong hong. Earth-shaking noises rang out once more from behind him. It was the gorilla and the wolf continuing their vicious battle. Yin Xan Zhao nearly coughed up blood at the sight, because while these two beasts were fighting between themselves, their battlefield was gradually moving towards him. "Run!" he shouted and hurriedly escaped with his two junior brothers in tow. They quickly traveled across hundreds of kilometers before searching for a way around to continue their pursuit. Nevertheless, he knew that it would be difficult for him to trace Yang Kai's whereabouts again after this delay. At this moment, Yang Kai was desperately running with Chu Huashang on his back. Although he had borrowed the two powerful sixth-order monster beasts to temporarily get away from Yin Xan Zhao and the others, he was certain the other party would not give up so easily, so he had to continue fleeing for his life. As he ran, he suddenly had the feeling that the terrain in this place was somewhat familiar. It vaguely felt like he had seen it before. After pondering deeply for a bit, the realization struck him all of a sudden. He quickly stopped in his tracks and took out an animal skin map from his space ring. Studying the map carefully and comparing the places he passed by with the places marked on the map, he couldn't help feeling surprised. Isn't this the route marked on the map? This animal skin map was something he obtained from the first cultivator he encountered in this place. The cultivator had tried to ambush him in the swamp when he first entered the blood monster cave heaven, only to be ambushed himself by a toad monster beast. At the time, Yang Kai had studied the map and discovered that it was probably part of a route in the blood monster cave heaven. It was just that he had no idea what was waiting for him at the final destination. Yang Kai originally planned to check out this place as the map looked ancient and might just lead to some hidden treasure. It was just that he met Bulian Zhong and the others along the way. Afterward, he encountered Blood Monster Divine Monarch's Tao of Blood Inheritance and was delayed as a result. Who could have known that he would arrive at the route marked on the map by accident whilst fleeing for his life? Taking a good look around, he found that the final destination marked on the map was located not far away from here. It would take him another 4 hours at most to arrive, so his eyes flashed in anticipation. Putting the map away, he headed in the indicated direction. He was not going there in search of treasure though. Rather, both he and Chu Huashang were currently in a condition where they were in dire need of a safe place to recuperate from their wounds. Regardless of whether the final destination turned out to be a hidden treasury or something else, it would surely be well hidden. 4 hours later, Yang Kai arrived in front of an enormous lake. He took out the map, checked his location, and confirmed that this was indeed the final destination. But he just stared at the lake with a speechless expression. What am I supposed to do if this is the final destination? The reason he strove so hard to come here was to find a place to hide and recuperate from his injuries. However, the terrain around the lake was completely unobstructed. Forget being chased by Yin Xan Zhao and the others. Even encountering a monster beast here would be troublesome. Yang Kai angrily put the map away. At this moment, he could only conceal himself within the sealed world bead and hide the sealed world bead in a secluded place. Yang Kai shook his head and chided lightly. "Since you're awake, senior sister, then don't get distracted. Your top priority should be to treat your injuries." Nodding weakly, she closed her eyes and began circulating some kind of secret art. She could clearly sense a powerful and energetic force flowing into her body through Yang Kai's palm. Wherever that energy flowed, her injuries healed at an unimaginable speed. She initially thought that it would take her 1 or 2 months just to recover. However, judging by the current situation, it would not take longer than a few days at most. Hence, she was secretly amazed at how high the order of the wood element power Yang Kai must have condensed was. She might not have condensed a 7th order element herself, but she was certain that what she was experiencing was not something a 7th order power could accomplish. A 7th order wood element would simply not have such astonishing regenerative properties. Is it an 8th order? Or even a 9th order? Just what did junior brother condense for him to obtain such a horrifyingly powerful wood element power? Another half a day passed, and her cheeks were now much rosier than before while her aura had stabilized somewhat. It was not until this moment that she realized she had been sleeping on Yang Kai's lap all this while. Moreover, they were even sharing a small bed inside a tiny stone room. "Junior brother, what is this place?" she asked curiously. He answered, "Inside a city." "A city?" He nodded. "There are many natives inside the blood monster cave heaven. And this place is one of the cities where a group of natives reside. We were captured and brought back here." "Then aren't we prisoners?" she exclaimed in surprise. "Just what happened after I fell unconscious? How did we get captured by the natives?" "I guess." Yang Kai chuckled. "What do we do now?" Her expression changed. "Who knows whether these natives have any malicious intentions towards us? Since we're already here, then we might as well see how things play out. Let's just focus on recovering for now. What can they do to us once we are fully healed?" She frowned and anxiously said, "I'm worried that they might do something to us before we recover completely. No, we can't just do nothing and wait for death. Junior brother, please cultivate with me." Yang Kai's eyes bulged as he stared at her, feeling speechless. "Senior sister, you're becoming delirious again." She immediately retorted, "Don't you dare knock me out again." The last time she had mentioned something similar, Yang Kai had knocked her unconscious without any hesitation. Therefore, she immediately became vigilant upon hearing those words. Yang Kai was truly exasperated as he grumbled, "What does our current situation have to do with cultivating together? As a Yin-Yang Cave Heaven disciple, I have been cultivating a Yin-Yang secret technique since I was young. If we engage in Yin-Yang union cultivation, then we can recover even faster. Even without doing that, our recovery is not slow." Yang Kai chuckled. "But time is of the essence right now, junior brother." Yang Kai fell silent for a moment before he sternly replied, "Senior sister, Yin-Yang union cultivation should only be done between people who are deeply in love with one another. This is a major life event. You should think this over carefully." "Of course I know that. Junior brother, you are a great candidate." She stared at him with clear eyes. It was just that her charming beauty, in addition to her weakened state, made her even more alluring than ever. He was stared at so intently that he couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. Thus he shifted his gaze away and muttered, "Including meeting here in the blood monster cave heaven, you and I have only met each other twice, senior sister. You don't know what kind of man I am." No matter what her original intentions towards him were, the fact that she could tell him everything without hiding anything indicated that she did not wish to harm him. "Junior brother, are you unwilling?" she asked. His answer was resolute. "I will go forward bravely on the road beneath my feet. I have already seen the path to the high-rank open heaven realm. Even if it is narrow, muddy, and full of thorns, I will not retreat. My Tao heart will become clouded if I choose the easier road instead." Chu Huashang sighed softly. "Junior brother, you are still a long way from advancing into the open heaven realm. Many people might have taken notice of you, but they have no intention of making a move against you yet. That is because they are people who must consider their own status. They cannot abuse their strength to crush you. Otherwise, it will harm their reputation if word gets out. At the moment, they are only using their juniors to cause trouble for and suppress you. But if they perceive you as a threat one day, they will neither hold back nor be merciful. Senior sister, can you tell me why the cave heavens and paradises are so sensitive to advancing directly into the high-rank open heaven realm?" Yang Kai asked. He could not understand this point no matter how hard he thought about it. He was simply cultivating his own Tao. It was not as if he was harming other people. So why did he end up in this situation for no apparent reason? Chu Huashang explained, I don't know if this is true as it is something I only heard about in rumors. A certain paradise once recruited a talented and promising disciple like you, junior brother. That disciple certainly lived up to expectations and advanced directly into the seventh order open heaven realm and was granted an important position as a result. Subsequently, the cave heaven exhausted all its resources and spent thousands of years helping him advance into the ninth order open heaven realm. In the open heaven realm, the first order is the weakest while the ninth order is the strongest. Once he reached the ninth order open heaven realm, there was practically nobody in the 3,000 worlds who was his equal. Afterward, nobody knew the reason why he suddenly had a drastic change of heart, but he went on to slaughter the entire paradise in a single day. Not only did everybody from that paradise lose their lives, but the paradise itself was destroyed. She paused for a moment and highlighted, following those events, the masters of the various cave heavens and paradises, who were allies of the previous paradise, joined together to hunt him down. Unfortunately, the force sent to subdue him was also wiped out. Moreover, it would seem that this incident caused that person to greatly despise the various cave heavens and paradises. He deliberately went on to wreak havoc for the cave heavens and paradises. For a time, the entire 3,000 worlds was plunged into a reign of terror. All 36 cave heavens and 72 paradises were swept up in this incident. This matter lasted for several hundreds of years. Only then was that person besieged to death. Unfortunately, all the cave heavens and paradises took severe damage as a result. Having learned from the lessons of the past, the current cave heavens and paradises tend to pay great attention to those who advance directly into the high-rank open heaven realm, lest the tragedy repeat itself. She carried on. At present, there exists a desolate territory where the space is shattered and the vitality is gone. That is where the final battle took place in the past. It is said that several hundred high-rank open heaven realm masters alone died in that battle. It is impossible to calculate how many mid-rank open heaven realm masters and low-rank open heaven realm masters died as well. Even though so many years have passed, that great territory is still fraught with dangers. The power of all sorts of divine abilities remains. Looking down, he saw that he was covered in blood, and there was a wound at his waist area that had penetrated right through his body. Nevertheless, considering his half-step open heaven realm cultivation, such an injury could be considered neither light nor serious, because his vitals had not been destroyed. I can't believe I'm not dead. Did he miss? All of a sudden, a series of groaning sounds entered Fan Wuxian's ears. Looking up, he was stunned by the sight before him. All the people who were defeated by the outer world visitor earlier were injured and bleeding, but not one of them had died. After witnessing this scene, how could Fan Wuxian not understand? The other party had not missed. Rather, he had held back. He had no intention of killing anybody, and was simply fighting back and defending himself. Fan Wuxian looked around once more, and saw countless cultivators of Abundance City continuing to besiege the outer world visitor. However, none of them could even slow him down. Yang Kai left a path of destruction everywhere he went, mowing down his opponents as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. On the other hand, the cultivators of Abundance City were cut down like wheat in a storm, collapsing to the ground one after another. Is he really human? Fan Wuxian looked dumbstruck. Kill him! Tan Luo Xing roared furiously with a savage expression as he too charged in the direction where Yang Kai was located. Fan Wuxian hurriedly followed suit after circulating his strength to staunch his bleeding. There was no other choice. He was the one who captured these people in the first place, so he could not just leave them be. Although the other party was still showing mercy, Fan Wuxian could not just sit around and watch as he caused such a huge commotion in Abundance City. Meanwhile, Yang Kai charged forward with his spear in hand, fighting his way through the city. He was extremely annoyed by now. It was not a pleasant experience to be besieged for no reason. Although he believed that there was a misunderstanding, He had no idea who to approach to resolve the situation. Thus he could only fight while running. He initially wanted to find a way to leave the city, but he couldn't find the exit at all. This city was guarded by a powerful spirit array, and there seemed to be no way out unless it was deactivated or opened. He had not killed any of the native cultivators here, so as not to create an irresolvable grudge between the two sides. There was still room for resolving this misunderstanding, as long as he did not kill anybody. On the contrary, he would have no choice but to fight to the end if he launched a slaughter. Fortunately, all the cultivators in this city were now aware of Yang Kai's strength. After his astonishing display just now, nobody dared to approach him carelessly, but there was still a large group of people surrounding him from afar, no matter where he went. Even though they had him surrounded though, they were the ones gulping nervously as terror and panic filled their faces. Yang Kai held his spear in hand, while Chu Huashang followed behind him, at a leisurely pace. They later helped the people here to establish Abundance City, and promised to find an opportunity to bring them out of the blood monster cave heaven. It was just that fate had other plans. After Lan Tingyu left the blood monster cave heaven, the heaven-defying opportunities he obtained made him the target of various cave heavens and paradises. These opportunities eventually cost him his life. Needless to say, he never returned to this place again. Over 1,000 years had passed since then. That was why these people had mistaken Yang Kai for Lan Tingyu when he first came here. It was also why Tan Luoxing was so shocked and blurted out, "Why did you come back here after so many years?" Upon considering all this, Yang Kai suddenly felt as though things were not adding up, so he hurriedly asked, "Has Elder Tan Luoxing ever met Lan Tingyu in the past?" Jin Yuanlang nodded. "Of course. Elder Tan and the rest of us here can be considered the earliest residents of Abundance City. When we first arrived at this place, there were only a few dozen of us. It was only after so many years of progress that we reached our current scale." Yang Kai wrinkled his brow. "That's strange. If Elder Tan is acquainted with Lan Tingyu and mistook me for him, why did he insist on slandering and accusing me of being a spy from Emerald Thunder City? He tried to kill me as soon as he saw me. If not for the fact that I have some skill, I would be nothing more than a corpse by now. I don't even know where Emerald Thunder City is located." Something like that happened. Pang Duo was surprised. Mu Qianxian pondered in silence, but a moment later, she glanced in Mo Mei's direction and heaved a heavy sigh without saying anything. Similarly, the others seemed to understand something, and their expressions became ugly. Chu Huashang suddenly whispered from behind Yang Kai, "Junior brother, it seems that Elder Tan regarded you as a love rival." Realization dawned on Yang Kai after listening to her words. Everything made sense if that was truly the case. Tan Luoxing was in love with City Lord Mo Mei, but Mo Mei only had eyes for Lan Tingyu. It was just that Lan Tingyu failed to appear after so many years, leading Tan Luoxing to believe that he still had a chance with her. Unfortunately, Yang Kai happened to arrive at this place at this time, and had his wooden token taken away by Fan Wu Xan. Only one such wooden token had been issued by Abundance City throughout history. It was something that Lan Tingyu took with him when he left. Only a dozen or so people knew about the existence of this wooden token, and out of all the people who knew about the situation, many had died over the years. Mo Mei and the 5 elders were the only ones left who knew about the origins of this wooden token. When Tan Luoxing saw the wooden token, he naturally sought to investigate the situation thoroughly. In the end, he saw Yang Kai and mistakenly assumed that Lan Tingyu had returned, sparking a murderous impulse in his heart. He immediately tried to kill Yang Kai, while the latter was bound by the restraints of the firm Yuan nail. Who would have learned the truth if he destroyed the corpse and removed all evidence? It was Tan Luoxing's bad luck that Yang Kai was not bound by the restraints of the firm Yuan nail at all. Yang Kai wounded him with a single palm strike. Afterward, things spiraled out of control, until there was no turning back. "Jinger, summon Elder Tan here at once. I have something to ask him." Mo Mei's expression was filled with rage. Jinger bowed. "Yes." Immediately afterward, She flew out of the city lord's mansion to search for Tan Luo Xing. Pang Duo glanced at Fan Wuxian, who had followed along. Deacon Fan, I heard that you were the one to bring Brother Yang and his companion back. Fan Wuxian quickly replied, that's right. Martial Peak, Chapter 4272. I'll show you what big is. A metal element monster beast core? Yang Kai could not hide his astonishment. Why does it have to be of the metal element? Little brother Yang, you might be unaware of this fact. Pang Duo leaned over, stroking his beard absent-mindedly, while watching the raging golden gorilla king warily. He explained, I don't know about the monster beasts in the outside world. However, I've heard that there are some differences with the monster beasts here. The monster beasts here can strengthen themselves and recover from their injuries by consuming the monster cores of monster beasts of the same element as them, thereby becoming more and more powerful. The monster beasts here grow stronger through such a method? Yang Kai was surprised at first, but he soon understood. It wasn't just the monster beasts in this place. There were many examples of monster beasts fighting for monster cores in the outside world too. Monster beasts cultivated very differently from humans. Humans had secret arts and secret techniques, but monster beasts did not. They relied completely on their instincts. If they felt that the monster core of another monster beast would be highly beneficial to them, they would not hold back if they could obtain it. It was just that the monster beast cores in the outside world usually contained a mixture of attributes. It was not nearly as pure and singular compared to the monster beast cores in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. That's right. The first time Golden Gorilla King appeared outside Abundance City, it had only just advanced to become a 6th-order monster beast. After so many years of receiving tribute from us, I'm afraid it's not far from becoming a 7th-order monster beast. Pang Duo's eyes looked fearful. They were no match for an ordinary 6th-order monster beast. So what more need be said about a 6th-order monster beast at its peak like Golden Gorilla King? One should not be fooled by its seriously wounded condition. If it really came down to a fight, the few thousands of people in Abundance City would not be enough to repel him. Yang Kai asked curiously, how did you manage to make an agreement with Golden Gorilla King to provide him with tributes? Jin Yuan Lang replied with a wry smile. It's not something that can be helped. Abundance City would have ceased to exist a long time ago if we refused to offer tribute. However, over the years, there have been several crises that Golden Gorilla King helped defend us against. He knows that we have value, so he allows us to exist in this place. If he decides that we no longer have any value though, a monster beast's thoughts could not be inferred from human common sense. If they failed to bring out a satisfactory tribute this time, there was no saying what kind of consequences they might face. Abundance City and Golden Gorilla King seemed to be dependent on each other for survival. Although Abundance City was the weaker between the two, they could provide Golden Gorilla King with a steady supply of metal element monster beast cores. It was for that reason that Golden Gorilla King would occasionally protect Abundance City from danger. During their brief conversation, Golden Gorilla King was becoming more and more furious by the moment. He roared continuously, blowing a foul stench in their faces. Emome shouted, Golden Gorilla King, I'm saying this for the last time. Abundance City does not have any tributes to offer at the moment. It's useless no matter how angry you get. Why don't you calm your anger and focus on healing yourself instead of wasting your energy in vain? Golden Gorilla King turned to glare at her. His crimson eyes filled with a cruel and ferocious light. All of a sudden, he raised his palm and slammed it down fiercely. Emome shouted, Everybody watch out. While shouting, she immediately moved to block the attack. Many of Abundance City's cultivators trembled as they quickly used their respective divine abilities and secret techniques. The moment they attacked in unison, the world energy churned wildly. All sorts of divine abilities of various attributes transformed into a frenzy of attacks that shot towards Golden Gorilla King in different forms. Yang Kai and Chu Huashang looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Strictly speaking, the people in Abundance City could not be considered powerful. They were suppressed by the principles in the blood monster cave heaven and could not advance into the open heaven realm. It didn't matter whether it was Mo Mei, the elders, or the other cultivators. The strongest among them was only half-step open heaven realm. In essence, their strength was still within the range of the Emperor realm. However, these Emperor realm masters seemed to be different from the Emperor realm masters in the outside world. That was especially true for Mo Mei, Pang Duo, and the other elders. All of them had an overwhelmingly powerful and extremely pure Emperor Qi, while the divine abilities that they could unleash were also incredibly powerful. When Yang Kai fought Tan Luo Xing back then, he had noticed this distinction. Among those in the half-step open heaven realm, Yang Kai knew even Chu Huashang might not be Tan Luo Xing's opponent. It had to be said that Chu Huashang had condensed the sixth-order element powers, while Tan Luo Xing had only condensed fifth-order powers. It would now seem that Tan Luo Xing was not a unique existence. It was the same case for Mo Mei and the other elders. After pondering over this matter for a while, Yang Kai understood the reason for this disparity. In the outside world, people like Mo Mei and Pang Duo would have tried to advance into the open heaven realm a long time ago. If they succeeded, they would experience a massive surge in strength. Of course, if they failed to break through, they would be reduced to ashes. There was no third possibility. Unfortunately, the people in Abundance City were suppressed by the principles in the blood monster cave heaven and could not advance any further. They had been stuck in the half-step open heaven realm for thousands of years. For that reason, they could only find other ways to increase their strength. It was only natural that their use of their open heaven elements became stronger and more refined after a long period of accumulation and precipitation. Similarly, the divine abilities that they could unleash were also more powerful. Yang Kai was secretly surprised. It would not be difficult for Mo Mei, Pang Duo, and the others to advance into the open heaven realm if they could find a suitable opportunity. After all, they had much lower chances of failure with such solid foundations. While he was immersed in his thoughts, numerous divine abilities had already collided with the giant palm of Golden Gorilla King. A golden light shone brightly as sharp metal element power shot out in all directions like countless sword lights. A buzzing sound rang out endlessly, and in an instant, many Abundance City cultivators collapsed to the ground with their fresh blood staining their surroundings red. Mo Mei and the others might have stopped that giant palm for a moment with their divine abilities, but their efforts could not be sustained for much longer. Just as the palm was about to slam down, Mo Mei, Pang Duo, and the others did not hesitate to rush forward. They frantically drew upon their power and blocked the palm from below. Hong! A golden force ran rampant and sliced through the sky. Countless small wounds appeared on everybody. Meanwhile, the figures of Mo Mei and the others staggered slightly. They were nearly pounded into the ground by Golden Gorilla King. No matter how powerful they were, they could not exceed the limits of the half-step open heaven realm. Even if Golden Gorilla King was injured, a peak sixth-order monster beast could exert the strength on par with a low-rank open heaven realm master at will. Abundance City had no way to fight back at all. Asterisk crack. Asterisk the sound of something breaking rang out. Jin Yuanlang's legs had been twisted and broken. Despite being in intense pain though, he grit his teeth and persevered without letting out a single sound. When Yang Kai saw that, he knew he could not stand by any longer. If he continued to just watch without doing anything, there was no telling how many people would die in this place today. He rushed forward and raised his hand, summoning the Azure Dragon Spear. In the next moment, the spear stabbed towards Golden Gorilla King like a dragon going out to sea. Golden Gorilla King turned to look in this direction, and while baring his fangs, he raised his other hand, that was covered in dense metal element power, and grabbed at Yang Kai. "Sir Yang, be careful," Mo Mei shouted. The words had only just left her mouth when she saw him vanishing out of sight, after he was caught squarely in the middle of the Golden Gorilla King's palm. This, Pang Duo and the others looked speechless. They originally thought that Yang Kai had extraordinary strength, since he could cause such a huge commotion in Abundance City. Who could have known that he would be so vulnerable? That thought had only just come to mind when they heard the Golden Gorilla King crying out in surprise. Immediately following that, fresh blood spurted out like a hurricane from his tightly clenched hand. A figure holding a spear shot out from within, spinning like a top that directly drilled a hole through the giant palm. The spear kept going, heading towards the Golden Gorilla King's head. Yang Kai's hair was disheveled, covered in Golden Gorilla King's fresh blood. He shouted solemnly, "It's best you don't get too brazen." Golden Gorilla King roared furiously and drew back both hands. Completely ignoring the wound on his palm, he clasped his fists together and savagely brought them down on Yang Kai. Hong! A shockwave spread out as Yang Kai's figure was slammed into the ground like a meteor. Likewise, Golden Gorilla King's figure was sent flying into the distance. An extra ferocious-looking wound was added to his body that was originally already covered in wounds. With Yang Kai's support, the pressure on Mo and the others reduced significantly. They hurriedly ran over in concern and stood beside the pit when they saw Yang Kai being smashed into the ground with Pang Duo shouting out, "Little brother Yang!" Shua! Yang Kai jumped out of the pit as his hair blew in the wind, shaking his head for a bit before stating, "I'm fine." Although his injuries had yet to heal, Golden Gorilla King was also severely injured. Both sides were on even ground and nobody held the advantage, a fact made obvious by the exchange of blows just now. "He's fine even after taking that." Pang Duo and the others were completely stunned. They couldn't believe that anybody could survive after being smashed into the ground by Golden Gorilla King. They all thought that Yang Kai would definitely die from that attack. Pooh! Yang Kai spat out a mouthful of blood and stabbed the Azure Dragon spear into the ground. He glared fiercely at Golden Gorilla King, who was also getting back up, and grinned savagely. "Do you think you can do whatever you please just because you're bigger? Today, I'll show you just what it means to be big." With a guttural roar, Yang Kai shouted, "Dragon transformation!" A high-pitched dragon roar exploded from his mouth, echoing across the sky. An enormous golden dragon appeared behind Yang Kai's back, looking extremely lifelike. The dragon eyes were filled with a majesty that stood above all other living beings. The golden dragon phantom plunged into his body and vanished out of sight in the next instant, before a crackling sound rang out. Under everybody's stunned gazes, Yang Kai's figure suddenly swelled and transformed into a 500-meter-tall half-dragon in the blink of an eye. With the continued development of his golden divine dragon source and the purification of his dragon vein, Yang Kai was starting to gain better control over his dragon transformation secret technique. His current 500-meter form should be enough to crush Golden Gorilla King, who was only several dozen meters tall. And if that wasn't enough, he could always transform into a behemoth more than 3,000 meters tall. Yang Kai's entire body was covered with dragon scales. His hands transformed into dragon claws. Dragon horns grew out of his head. A dragon tail swished about behind his back, and a dragon beard flew about wildly below his jaw. He was the very picture of majesty and invincibility. Chu Huashang lifted a hand to cover her red lips, staring up at him with shock in her beautiful eyes. It was her first time witnessing his transformation. She initially thought that she understood him to an extent after the life-or-death experiences they went through together. It was not until this moment that she realized something. What she saw was only the tip of the iceberg. Inside Abundance City, thousands of people raised their heads and stared up at Yang Kai. All of them felt as insignificant as ants in front of this enormous figure. It was one thing if it was just their height, but the majesty Yang Kai radiated was what truly made them shudder. They instinctively felt the urge to bow down and worship him. The cultivators of Abundance City were not the only ones frozen in shock. Golden Gorilla King was also stunned for a moment. As a monster beast, he could sense the dragon pressure that Yang Kai was releasing much more acutely than humans ever could. So his eyes narrowed slightly, and he instinctively took a few steps back. However, he soon directed a furious roar at Yang Kai. It was almost as though he felt ashamed for backing away just now, so he could only strengthen his momentum through this roar. Similarly, Yang Kai roared back at Golden Gorilla King. The dragon roar resounded throughout the skies, making the wind and clouds pale in comparison. Then, he took a step forward and charged at Golden Gorilla King. Golden Gorilla King did not shrink back in fear either, rushing forward instead. The two enormous figures quickly collided with each other, with a deafening explosion that shook the entire world. Martial Peak. Chapter 4273, Blood Principles Restriction. Hong hong hong. A series of violent explosions rang out as the two enormous figures were tangled together, fighting each other with reckless abandon. Abundance City was a mess. The city was not that large in the first place. So how could it withstand the damage caused by the battle between Yang Kai in his half-dragon form and Golden Gorilla King? It didn't take very long for half of the city to be destroyed. Countless buildings collapsed and turned into ruins. Yang Kai could not afford to care about that at the moment though. Golden Gorilla King might be severely injured, but every attack unleashed by a peak 6th order monster beast contained great destructive power. In his current state, Yang Kai could not defend against those attacks unless he went all out. Therefore, he had no time to be distracted or worry about anything else. Although he had an absolute advantage when it came to size, there were times when having a larger body did not necessarily guarantee a win. Golden Gorilla King's movements were swift and agile. He would climb onto Yang Kai's body from time to time, biting and scratching his scales and flesh with his fangs and sharp claws. As a result, Yang Kai's back was drenched in blood, and his dragon scales flew in all directions. On the other hand, Yang Kai countered by grabbing Golden Gorilla King by one arm. He tightened his grip and swung his foe left to right as though he was smashing something with a large hammer. Hong hong hong. The ground shook and the mountains shuddered. Golden Gorilla King roared furiously as his body shone brightly with golden light. Yang Kai suddenly felt pain coming from his palm, as though the sharp metal element power was piercing his dragon claws, so he couldn't help throwing Golden Gorilla King to the side. As soon as Golden Gorilla King landed, he raised both arms and hammered his fists against his chest with loud thuds. He was completely enraged. Reaching out his hand, he picked up a rock beside him. He leaped up high and brought the rock smashing down on Yang Kai's head. Like a meteor falling from the skies, his power was simply astonishing. Everybody felt nervous at the sight. The scene in front of them was practically a battle between monsters. Nobody dared to approach within a kilometer radius. Yang Kai clenched his dragon claw and threw a punch, smashing the huge boulder to pieces. At the same time, he took a deep breath and his belly swelled up rapidly. A majestic dragon roar sounded as he opened his mouth to spew out pitch-black flames. Fire Dragon's flaming breath. Even before he refined the Golden Crow's true fire, Yang Kai had been capable of using this particular Dragon Clan secret technique. After he refined the Golden Crow's true fire, this secret technique became considerably more powerful with the blessing of the pitch-black flames. Scarlet Star's Poison Lady had died tragically because of this attack back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Yang Kai had burnt her alive until she became nothing more than a charred corpse. The flames raged wildly, even causing the surrounding space to warp and tear. Golden Gorilla King could sense the power and danger of these black flames, and did not dare to underestimate this attack. The golden light around his body shone brilliantly, and formed a defensive shell. When the black flames and the golden light collided, the golden light was suppressed in an instant. While Golden Gorilla King could exert the strength of a low-rank Open Heaven Realm Master, and his metal element power was comparable to the 6th Order, Yang Kai's Golden Crow's true fire was a high-rank Open Heaven power. One was clearly superior to the other. Besides, even among the 5 elements, fire suppressed metal. Hence, the 6th Order monster beast could only forcefully endure the burning of the Golden Crow's true fire, and rushed out of the jet of flames. He clenched both hands together and viciously slammed them down on Yang Kai's head. Yang Kai staggered under that attack and stumbled backward unsteadily. Golden Gorilla King showed no mercy. He used both hands and feet to punch and kick at Yang Kai at a high speed. The golden light around his body gathered in front of him, transforming into the shape of a spear. Following that, the golden light shot, tearing the air apart. A huge sense of crisis filled Yang Kai's heart, so he hurriedly activated his Dragon Shield secret technique to protect himself from this piercing attack. Gotcha! The golden spear slammed into the dragon's shield and immediately shattered it to pieces. However, the golden spear did not seem to lose any momentum whatsoever and continued to enlarge rapidly in Yang Kai's field of vision. A cold sense of fear swept over him as he quickly retreated. Yang Kai realized that he had underestimated Golden Gorilla King. A peak 6th-order monster beast was extremely powerful indeed, remaining so ferocious despite his severe injuries. What would he be like if he were fully healed? Of course, Yang Kai was also badly injured and had not fully recovered, so he was unable to exert his full strength either. Yang Kai reached out his hand and summoned something. The azure dragon spear sliced through the air and flew towards him. The moment his claws closed around the spear, it suddenly swelled and turned into a world-shattering 500-meter-long weapon. The spear stabbed forward and smashed the approaching golden spear to pieces. Still, Yang Kai felt his arms going numb as the azure dragon spear nearly flew out of his grip. Fortunately, he quickly clenched his fists and drew the spear back slightly before thrusting out once more. Golden Gorilla King appeared from behind the golden spear light, charging forward aggressively. He bared his fangs fiercely, making him seem absolutely terrifying. Chi! Blood splattered in all directions as a low roar rang out. The azure dragon spear had pierced right through Golden Gorilla King's chest and come out his back. Yang Kai pulled out the spear, causing warm blood to gush out onto the ground. Even so, Golden Gorilla King advanced forward instead of retreating. Taking advantage of the momentary opening Yang Kai showed after unleashing his attack, he threw a punch that landed squarely on Yang Kai's chest. Yang Kai's giant half-dragon body was sent flying backwards, landing on the ground heavily and sliding for several thousand meters before coming to a stop. Everywhere he passed, buildings collapsed into rubble. By the time Yang Kai got back up and prepared to continue his fight with Golden Gorilla King, he was astonished to discover that his foe was nowhere to be found, so he called out hastily, "Where did he go?" Chu Huashang stretched out a finger and pointed in a certain direction. Yang Kai looked over and saw a golden dot fleeing desperately into the distance. Golden Gorilla King was already more than a dozen kilometers away by now. He clearly understood that nothing good would come out of the battle even if he fought on. Therefore, he decided to retreat. It was a wise decision. It was just that Yang Kai was not prepared to let Golden Gorilla King flee. He raised his spear and laughed. "Want to run now? Do you think you can?" Before he could take more than 2 steps though, Emome shouted at the top of her voice, "Sir Yang, please show mercy." Yang Kai stopped and lowered his head to look in her direction. Seeing that she had his attention, Emome spoke in a rather sad tone. "Sir, please don't give chase. Please spare his life." "Why?" Yang Kai questioned. To which Emome replied, "Golden Gorilla King might have benefited greatly from Abundance City, but it is also true that he has helped us to survive through numerous crises over the years. It can be said that he is our benefactor. This time, it might be that he is in urgent need to recuperate, which was why he acted so rashly." Upon hearing those words, Yang Kai couldn't help giving a word of advice. Save a thief from the gallows, and he will help hang you in the future. City Lord Emo, please think this through. But Emome insisted, "Sir, please spare his life." Yang Kai pondered for a moment before he released his dragon transformation secret art, and he returned to his human form. Since Emome had already said so much, he couldn't be bothered to chase after Golden Gorilla King anymore. Not to mention, Golden Gorilla King was not an opponent to be trifled with. Although Yang Kai was confident he could hunt down and kill Golden Gorilla King with his current strength, there was no denying that he would have to pay a certain price to do so. Emome thanked him while the other elders were staring at him in shock and awe. It was the first time they had ever seen anyone fighting Golden Gorilla King on equal terms. This guy seems to be even stronger and more aggressive than Lan Tingyu. Many things had happened in Abundance City today. First, Yang Kai had caused a huge commotion. Then one of the 5 great elders, Tan Luoxing, forced open the Grand Array and escaped the city. Before the dust had settled on these shocking events, Golden Gorilla King appeared. Yang Kai and Golden Gorilla King then fought a fierce battle, which practically leveled half of Abundance City. Looking around at the ruined buildings and wailing residents, Emome couldn't help furrowing her brow deeply. All the elders were injured. In particular, Jin Yuanlang's legs had been broken. Many others in the city had been injured as well. It could be said that Abundance City had suffered severe damage to its very foundation. Soon, those who were not injured began to rescue those who were under Emome's command. Another group of people was sent to do emergency repairs on the defensive Grand Array. Thus, the entire Abundance City was swept up in a flurry of activity. Yang Kai found a quiet place and rested for a bit. After that, he came out again to check on the situation in Abundance City. He said to Emome, who stood next to him, "City Lord Emo, I'm afraid you can't stay here for much longer. You spared Golden Gorilla King's life today, but the thoughts of monster beasts are very difficult to predict. It is hard to say whether he will or will not come to take revenge on the city after he recovers from his injuries. How will Abundance City protect itself at the time?" Emome sighed. "I'm aware of that. It's just, how could it be so easy to migrate to a different place?" Back then, they only managed to build and establish the city thanks to the help of Lan Tingyu, the proprietress, and a few others. They finally reached their current scale following the gradual development of the city over thousands of years. Even if they wanted to migrate elsewhere, they needed to have a safe place to act as their stronghold at the very least. It was just that there were no such safe places in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. What's more, Abundance City had their own enemies, such as Emerald Thunder City, which had been mentioned several times before. If Emerald Thunder City learned about what happened to Abundance City, they would not hold back. They would definitely gather an army to swallow up Abundance City, bones and all. Have you never considered leaving the Blood Monster Cave Heaven? Yang Kai was puzzled. Emome laughed bitterly. Why would we stay here if we could leave this place? Sir Yang, you may not be aware of this, but my ancestors were kidnapped by Blood Monster Divine Monarch and forced to live here. Blood Monster Divine Monarch was proficient in the Tao of Blood, so he placed a Blood Principles restriction on them. This restriction is passed down from generation to generation. If the Blood Principles restriction does not constantly receive the aura of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, we will immediately suffer a backlash and die on the spot. That is why we must first remove the restriction before we can leave this place. Otherwise, we will only be walking to our deaths. Blood Principles restriction? Yang Kai raised his brow at those words. City Lord Emo, may I have a look? She looked at him in surprise. Sir Yang, do you understand the Tao of Blood? Yang Kai calmly remarked. I didn't at first, but now I know a little bit. He had never touched upon the Tao of Blood in the past, but he had now comprehended several chapters of the Grand Evolution Immortal Bloodlight scripture that were inscribed on steels at the Blood Lake in order to enter its central palace. Although the final inscriptions had been fudged by Black Crow Divine Monarch, what Yang Kai learned previously was undoubtedly part of the true Bloodlight scripture. In other words, most of the cultivators present at the time had received some exposure to the Tao of Blood and Blood Principles. It was just that everybody was the same. They only understood some of the Bloodlight scripture's secret techniques, but not the actual secret arts. Please go ahead, Sir Yang. Emome did not have the attitude of a shy young maiden, and instead generously stretched out her hand towards him. Yang Kai apologized for his discourtesy and placed 2 fingers on her wrist. His divine sense surged, probing into her bloodline where he soon discovered a mysterious restriction. It was closely connected to her bloodline and could not be separated by force. Not to mention, this restriction could be passed on continuously through reproduction. No wonder she mentioned that Lan Tingyu wanted to find a way to bring them out of here. It now seems that they cannot leave the Blood Monster Cave Heaven at will. Under the effects of this restriction, they have no choice but to live in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. A short while later, Yang Kai withdrew his chi and slowly shook his head. She asked, how is it? Yang Kai sighed. I can sense the restriction, but I don't have the ability to remove it. Emome felt slightly hopeful when she heard his first sentence, only to quickly become disappointed with his next. In the end, she laughed bitterly. You are being too humble, Sir Yang. After all, he was able to force Golden Gorilla King back. That was by no means a small feat. Martial Peak, Chapter 4274 Into the Depths. Yang Kai felt a slight sense of pity. He had been planning to use the sealed world bead to bring Mo Mei and the others out of the blood monster cave heaven, if they were willing. They were old acquaintances with the proprietress. It was nothing for him to help them out while he was at it. More importantly, he believed that the people in Abundance City were extremely rare talents. Judging from their battle with the Golden Gorilla King earlier, these Emperor Realm cultivators had a much stronger foundation than average emperors in the outside world. That was especially true for Mo Mei and the Great Elders. They were no different from core disciples of the various cave heavens and paradises like Chu Huashang and Pei Wenxian. Mo Mei had condensed 6th-order element powers, while the rest of the elders had condensed the 5th-order elements. Thanks to their precipitation over the years, they would surely have a greater chance of breaking through to the open heaven realm compared to others, if they could obtain the opportunity. If that happened, they would form a whole batch of 5th-order and 6th-order open heaven realm masters. What did Void Land lack the most right now? Wasn't there a shortage of open heaven realm masters? Yang Kai believed that it would not be a problem for him to invite them into Void Land if he could bring them out. After all, they had lived their entire lives in the blood monster cave heaven, so they had no place to go in the outside world. Void Land was just right for them. Unfortunately, the blood principle's restriction that blood monster divine monarch placed upon their ancestors had crushed all his hopes. If he placed them into the small sealed world, they would immediately die without the nourishment from the aura of the blood monster cave heaven. Mo Mei sighed. This place has become more and more unstable recently. I'm afraid our fate is to live and die together with this world. Many thanks for your kindness though, Sir Yang. The blood monster cave heaven was showing signs of collapse. That was something Yang Kai also knew. The most obvious manifestation of this phenomenon was the continuous increase in the number of entrances to the blood monster cave heaven whenever the blood monster cave heaven opened. That was a sign that the blood monster cave heaven was merging with the blood monster territory. If these signs were appearing in the outside world, then there was bound to be more obvious signs inside the blood monster cave heaven. It would be particularly obvious to Mo Mei and the others who lived here. Yang Kai pondered in silence for a moment. City Lord Mo, you don't need to abandon all hope just yet. I know somebody who can lift the blood principle's restriction in your bodies. Who? Mo Mei asked in pleasant surprise. He grimaced. A guy named Black Crow Divine Monarch. Black Crow Divine Monarch had stolen the Tao of blood inheritance left behind by Blood Monster Divine Monarch, and cultivated the complete version of the Grand Evolution Immortal Blood Light scripture. It would be a simple matter if he were willing to lend a hand to help remove the blood principle's restriction. The main issue was that Black Crow Divine Monarch was wicked by nature. Moreover, he had a deep grudge against Yang Kai. It could be considered a miracle if they neither fought nor tried to kill each other when they encountered each other next. So how could Yang Kai convince him to help? Black Crow Divine Monarch? Mo Mei looked astonished. Although she lived her entire life in the blood monster cave heaven, even she knew what the title Divine Monarch signified. Only a high-rank open heaven realm master was worthy of taking such a title. Why would a person standing so far above them be willing to help them remove the blood principle's restriction for no reason? Black Crow Divine Monarch is currently inside the blood monster cave heaven. If I encounter him by chance, I will ask him to help. It's just that there are some misunderstandings between us, so I cannot guarantee whether he will agree. I can only say that I will do my best. Mo Mei bowed and exclaimed gratefully, Many thanks, Sir Yang. Yang Kai raised a hand to stop her. It's not a big deal. Abundant City has deep ties with Madame Lan. Since that's the case, it also relates to me. I can't just sit back and watch now that I've met you. City Lord Mo, you should arrange for your subordinates to patch up the Grand Array. I cannot stay in this place for long, so I'll be leaving soon. Mo Mei nodded and hurriedly relayed the order to her people. It took 3 days and 3 nights for the repairs to Abundance City's grand array to be completed. Nevertheless, the ruined buildings in the city caused by the battle between Yongkai and Golden Gorilla King also needed to be repaired. In addition, the countless wounded needed time to recuperate from their injuries. The events over the past few days had severely damaged Abundance City's foundation, so it would take a long time to recover completely. Meanwhile, Yongkai and Chu Huashang took a good rest for a few days. 3 days later, the two of them took their leave. Mo Mei and the others did not stop them from departing, as they knew that outer world visitors like Yongkai and Chu Huashang had entered the Blood Monster Cave Heaven to search for their own respective opportunities. It was impossible for these two to remain in Abundance City, as once the time limit was up, they would be forced to leave even if they didn't want to. The Grand Array was reactivated, and with Mo Mei in the lead, many of the elders and deacons of Abundance City saw Yongkai and Chu Huashang off from afar. Thus Yongkai and Chu Huashang exited the Grand Array. When they looked back, all they saw was a sparkling lake behind them. Who could have known that a city was hidden behind such a calm scenery? "Let's go," Yongkai called out. Chu Huashang asked, "Junior brother, where are we heading?" "The depths of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven." He took out a jade slip and checked the contents briefly. Blood Monster Divine Monarch had left behind 2 main inheritances. Even though the Tao of Blood inheritance had been stolen by Black Crow Divine Monarch, there was still the Beast Taming inheritance. Yongkai did not know where it was concealed, but the rumors claimed that the Blood Monster Divine Palace was located in the deepest depths of the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. The reason Yongkai even entered this place was to search for high-ranked metal and Yin element materials. Who could say? The Blood Monster Divine Palace might contain exactly what he needed. Yongkai was secretly looking forward to it. It would also be very interesting if he encountered Yin Xan Zhao again. The last time they met, Yongkai had been forced to flee desperately, which was a huge humiliation. Now that he had recovered his strength, he would surely teach Yin Xan Zhao a lesson on showing proper respect. The pair traveled forward for several consecutive days, but did not come across anybody at all. They barely even encountered any monster beasts, much less any spirit flowers or exotic herbs. Yongkai knew that the series of encounters he experienced previously, and the delay in Abundance City, had caused him to be much slower than the others, so all the good stuff along the road ahead would surely have been taken. Be that as it may, this did not bother Yongkai. There were a lot of good things in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, but not many interested him. After all, it was practically impossible for anybody else in the Emperor realm to be wealthier than him. They continued onward for another half a day when all of a sudden, they halted in their tracks and stood atop a small hill to study the battlefield in front of them. A huge battle had probably taken place here, and there were still strong energy fluctuations lingering everywhere. The ground was also littered with damaged artifacts. A dozen or so corpses lay haphazardly on the ground, each one shriveled up terribly, as though something had drained all the essence out of their bodies. Moreover, these corpses retained expressions of horror on their faces from just before they died. Yongkai and Chu Huashang exchanged a glance with each other and blurted out in unison, "Black Crow Divine Monarch." These people had clearly died from having their vitality drained by the Grand Evolution Immortal Bloodlight scripture. Such obvious signs clearly indicated that Black Crow Divine Monarch had attacked this place. Black Crow Divine Monarch's strength could be said to be invincible in this place. Even if Yongkai went all out, he would not be a match for Black Crow Divine Monarch. This old dog had the heritage of a high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master after all. Now that he had possessed a body and revived himself, Emperor Realm Juniors were as insignificant as ants in front of him. Fortunately, Yongkai knew the old fart's weakness. Black Crow Divine Monarch's damaged soul was a critical flaw. Yongkai had nothing to fear even if he met Black Crow Divine Monarch again. It was just that he did not know how to ask Black Crow Divine Monarch to help remove the Blood Principle's restriction from the bodies of the people in Abundance City. It was extremely troubling. Based on the appearance of these corpses, they had been dead for a few days. All of their space rings were nowhere to be seen, but Yang Kai could not tell whether Black Crow Divine Monarch had taken them, or the people who passed by later had looted them. If he had not come across Abundance City, Yang Kai would have taken a detour lest he run into Black Crow Divine Monarch again. However, he had promised Mo Mei that he would do his best to ask Black Crow Divine Monarch to help remove the blood principle's restriction in their bodies. As such, he could not avoid Black Crow Divine Monarch. The pair continued to track Black Crow Divine Monarch's progress. Along the way, they would occasionally come across some shriveled corpses. It was not just the corpses of cultivators, but also the corpses of monster beasts. All of them had died from having their vitality drained by the bloodlight scripture. Judging by Black Crow Divine Monarch's path, he seemed to be heading into the depths of the blood monster cave heaven. This discovery shocked Yang Kai. It was rumored that the blood monster divine palace was hidden at the core of the blood monster cave heaven, where nobody had ever been before. All blood monster divine monarch's inheritances were preserved inside, waiting for the lucky person to discover them. It was just that the rumors had remained as nothing more than rumors after so many years. Nobody had ever confirmed the rumors, because nobody had ever arrived at the depths of the blood monster cave heaven, or found the blood monster divine palace. Even so, the current situation seemed to indicate that there was a high possibility the blood monster divine palace truly existed. If one were to say who had the greatest understanding of the blood monster cave heaven, it would not be Yang Kai or the proprietress. Rather, it would be Black Crow Divine Monarch. Although he had been sealed away by Blood Monster Divine Monarch for countless years, he had obtained Blood Monster Divine Monarch's Tao of Blood inheritance. How could he not have some understanding of the secrets in this place? If he was heading in this direction, then it could only mean that there was something in this direction that was attracting him. The only thing that could move a high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master could only be the inheritance of another high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master. After figuring out this point, Yang Kai increased his speed and pursued Black Crow Divine Monarch. They continued forward for a while before he suddenly halted. Chu Huashang followed suit and stopped to look at him. "What's wrong, junior brother?" Yang Kai turned to look in a certain direction. "There are sounds of battle." He paused for a moment and added, "It's heading our way." When he spread out his divine sense, he could detect the sounds of battle coming from a certain direction. The other party probably detected him through their perception as a result, and immediately rushed towards him. He did not know whether the other party intended to seek help or foist the enemy off on them instead. He initially planned to ignore the other party, but before he could leave, he noticed something and exclaimed in surprise. Following that, he pushed his divine sense strongly and probed the situation in that direction. A short while later, he became overjoyed and called out, "Senior sister, follow me." While saying so, he immediately rushed to meet the other party. Chu Huashang did not know why he was so elated, but she did not question him. It didn't take long before two figures that were fleeing desperately appeared in their field of vision. It was a man and a woman. Moreover, this man and woman were being pursued closely by 6 others. They unleashed a continuous barrage of secret techniques and the power of artifacts, blasting those 2 fleeing figures until they became increasingly desperate. A dazzlingly bright light burst out. It was a killing move summoned by one of the pursuers that shot straight at the backs of the fleeing duo. The woman seemed to perceive that danger, and hurriedly turned around to mount a defense. On the other hand, the man focused on escaping and ignored what was happening behind him. The long sword in the woman's hand slashed downward, and a sword light flashed out, colliding with the attack coming from behind. Following the commotion, the woman's body flew into the air like a paper kite. She spat out a mouthful of fresh blood in mid-air, and her complexion turned as pale as a sheet. Martial Peak, Chapter 4275, Heavenly Sword Union. The woman seemed to have suffered heavy injuries previously. Therefore, this attack only made her condition worsen. The other man looked back in horror, and a trace of struggle and hesitation flashed through his eyes before he fled without pause. Shameless, Chu Huashang cursed upon witnessing this scene. The person she cursed was not the group of people attacking, but the man running at the forefront. This fleeing pair were clearly companions. They were either lovers or senior brother and junior sister. Now that they were in danger, only the woman had turned around to defend against the attacks, and was injured as a result. On the contrary, the man not only did not turn around to help, but ran even faster instead. It was the height of despicableness. His actions even made him seem like he wanted the woman to buy more time for him to escape. In their current state, he might not be able to escape his pursuers, even if he turned around to help his companion. There was a chance that she might survive if he had done that. However, there was no doubt that she would die now that he had abandoned her. Chu Huashang was also a woman. It could have been her in that situation. How tragic would that have been? Then, she thought back to what Yang Kai had done so far. No matter what kind of situation they were in, or how badly they were injured, he had never abandoned her. Be that as it may, they could not be said to have a close relationship with each other. They had only met once or twice before after all. Comparing these two men, their characters were as different as night and day. She had not thought much about this before, but now that she made a comparison, she couldn't help feeling a sense of warmth and sweetness in her heart. Likewise, Yang Kai was also enraged. The pursuers were about to attack once more, but the woman was powerless to defend herself. Seeing that, he rushed forward and appeared in front of her, while throwing out a punch at the same time. Space principles flared and the void shattered. The expressions of the pursuers changed greatly. They hurriedly took action to defend themselves as one of them shouted, "Who?" There was a series of rumblings, and when the dust settled, the pursuers were disheveled, and their complexions had gone pale. All of them looked in Yang Kai's direction with fear in their eyes. Yang Kai stared back at them coldly as he asked, "Ruashi, are you all right?" The woman originally thought that she could not escape death today, but who could have known that a reliable figure would appear in front of her and block the barrage of attacks for her at a critical moment? She looked up, thinking that the back looked strangely familiar. When she heard his voice, her beautiful eyes widened in surprise as she asked in a trembling voice, "Sir?" She nearly thought that she was dreaming. Ever since departing from the star boundary and heading out into the outer universe together, they had not heard anything from each other after they were devoured by a myriad facets insect. She had tried to search for him, but the 3,000 worlds were simply too vast. There were as many great territories as hairs on an ox. Moreover, each great territory was large and boundless. Trying to find a person in the 3,000 worlds was harder than trying to find a needle in a haystack. Throughout her journey, she continued her search and experienced all sorts of hardships. She finally arrived at Langya Paradise. Following the legacy of her ancestor, she joined Langya Paradise and became one of its disciples. When she heard that the Blood Monster Cave Heaven was about to open, she struggled desperately to obtain a place among the participants. With Yang Kai's abilities and heritage, she believed that he would definitely enter the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. In that case, she only needed to search for him inside. It would be much easier than her search in the past. Unfortunately, the Blood Monster Cave Heaven was filled with dangers at every corner. She coincidentally met up with a senior brother, so they decided to travel together. Who could have known that they would encounter trouble and be hunted down by others? Just as she was about to die, Yang Kai miraculously appeared in front of her. She had the sudden impulse to burst into tears. She had been able to endure all the hardships and tribulations on her own before she saw him. Her expression never changed even with a blade held to her neck. However, she reacted like a child who finally found support after suffering grievances outside the moment she saw him. Yang Kai never expected to encounter Zhang Ruashi here either, much less that their reunion after so many years would be under such circumstances. Back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, he had tried to ask Gu Pan from Langya Paradise about her. It was a pity that Gu Pan claimed that she had never heard the name Zhang Ruashi before. Yang Kai figured that there were two possibilities. One was that Zhang Ruashi had not gone to Langya Paradise. The other was that Gu Pan had not met her. There were at least hundreds of thousands of people in Langya Paradise's main sect, so it was impossible for Gu Pan to know all of its disciples. During their conversation, Chu Huashang landed next to Yang Kai and crouched beside Zhang Ruoxi. She stretched out her hand to support her and asked in concern, "Junior sister, are you all right?" Zhang Ruoxi shook her head slowly and whispered, "I'm fine." Then, she abruptly opened her mouth and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Chu Huashang's expression changed slightly. How could she not know that this woman's injuries were very severe? She quickly took out some healing pills and fed them to Zhang Ruoxi. "Senior sister Chu, please take care of my friend." Yang Kai's voice was low and grim. It was a tone she had never heard from him before. Although he sounded calm, she could sense the hidden rage rampaging beneath that tranquility. Rest assured, Chu Huashang carried Zhang Ruoxi and moved to a spot in the distance. The pursuers frowned deeply at the sight, and the young man in the lead spoke with a dark expression. "Who are you? Please don't interfere in the matters of Heavenly Sword Union. Am I supposed to just stand back and watch as you try to kill my friend?" Yang Kai glanced at the young man coldly. The young man frowned slightly. After briefly considering the situation, he cupped his fist. "In that case, I will take my leave now." After saying that, he turned to leave. He seemed to have realized that Yang Kai was strong after the exchange of blows just now, so he did not wish to start a fight so easily. Yang Kai shouted, "Did you think you could just leave after hurting others? Do you think something so simple exists?" Who could have known that the young man was actually only pretending to leave? His real purpose was to distract Yang Kai. The words had only left Yang Kai's mouth when he suddenly shouted, "Die!" Xiao! The ground beneath Yang Kai shuddered, and a green vine shot out without any prior warning. The vine was like a snake that wrapped around Yang Kai so tightly that he resembled a dumpling. That was not all. The vine was covered in incredibly sharp thorns that stabbed into his skin and released a powerful poison. He never intended to retreat in the first place. The fact that he had tried to kill Zhang Ruoxi and the other man could not be leaked out to the world. Otherwise, he would be in huge trouble even if he managed to walk out of the blood monster cave heaven alive. Heavenly Sword Union could be considered among the top second-class great forces, with a number of sixth-order open heaven realm masters assuming command. Nevertheless, it was vastly inferior compared to Langya Paradise. That was because Langya Paradise had high-rank open heaven realm masters. Blinded by wealth just now, he had planned to kill and rob Zhang Ruoxi and the other Langya Paradise disciple, when he saw that they were not very powerful. Who could have known that they would encounter Yang Kai and Chu Huashang here? When he saw Yang Kai and Chu Huashang, he immediately decided to silence all witnesses to his crimes. If word about this incident were to spread, forget about Langya Paradise's reaction. Heavenly Sword Union would be the first to capture him and offer his head up as an apology. The only way to ensure his safety was to kill them all. At the same time the green vine shot out of the ground, he charged towards Yang Kai. His sword flashed briefly and slashed towards Yang Kai's neck. The others also quickly unleashed their killing moves. Every one of those attacks was extraordinarily powerful, and they seemed intent on killing Yang Kai on the spot. "How dare dead men like you come out to cause trouble?" Yang Kai roared. With a whooshing sound, Golden Crow's true fire covered his entire body and began burning down everything around him. The vine curled around his body was an extraordinary treasure. Nevertheless, it was powerless before the raging Golden Crow's true fire. Twitching like a living thing, it hurriedly shrank back and tried to plunge into the ground again. Yang Kai grinned madly, reached out a hand, and caught the vine, all the while ignoring the thorns that dug into his flesh and secreted poison, which was making him slightly dizzy. With his Dragon Clan heritage, Yang Kai had incredibly strong resistance to poison. Most poisons were completely ineffective against him, but this vine managed to affect him slightly. It could be seen how powerful the poison was. Even if ordinary cultivators did not die from the effects of this poison, they would lose most of their combat power once afflicted with it. The realization struck Yang Kai suddenly. No wonder the auras of Zhang Ruoxi and that fleeing man seem so weak. It looks like they have been poisoned by the vine. Yang Kai held the vine in his grip, and under the heat of the Golden Crow's true fire, It kept twisting and struggling about. He then flicked the vine as though he was wielding a whip, and sent it lashing towards the attackers. Their expressions changed drastically. They never imagined that this man could break free so quickly. After all, they had used this very trick to kill many people before. Many of those victims had even been stronger than them. Before they could understand what was going on, the vine sent them flying backwards. Every one of them coughed up blood in midair. They looked terrified when they hit the ground. If Yang Kai had unleashed world force, they would have understood why they were defeated in one move. However, the aura radiating from him was still within the bounds of the Emperor Realm. How can an Emperor Realm cultivator be this powerful? We are not his opponents at all. Retreat! The young man in the lead shouted, as they desperately performed their secret techniques to escape from this place. At this point, they did not care whether or not they would be exposed for trying to kill Langya Paradise disciples. Survival was their top priority. Solidify! Yang Kai shouted as he pushed his space principles, and the surrounding space instantly transformed into a cage. Those people felt the space around them becoming viscous, like they had fallen into a quagmire and could not move. They turned around and looked at Yang Kai in horror, only to see him walking towards them with a wooden expression. He arrived at the closest person, glanced down at them, and casually threw a punch. That person's head exploded open like a smashed watermelon, with brain matter and blood splattering everywhere. Then he walked over to the next person, glanced down at them, and threw another punch. Next came the third, followed by the fourth. In the blink of an eye, only the young man leading the pursuers remained alive, trembling from head to toe. Although he was desperately trying to summon his strength, he discovered that his Emperor Qi was not flowing smoothly. Forget fighting back. Even moving a finger was an extremely difficult task. He watched helplessly as Yang Kai walked over to him. The fear in his heart overflowed from his eyes. He was on the verge of a mental breakdown as he screamed, "Don't kill me!" "Don't worry. I won't kill you." Yang Kai looked at the young man calmly. The young man could barely believe his ears. Really? On the other hand, Yang Kai said nothing. With a flick of the vine, he wrapped the young man up in it. The young man, who was now wrapped up like a dumpling, asked in a horrified voice, "What are you doing?" Yang Kai slowly crouched beside the young man and lowered his head to look at him. Then he picked up the young man's right arm and gave a powerful squeeze. Kacha! The sound of bones breaking rang out. The young man screamed in agony, but before his scream ended, the sound of bones breaking rang out again, raising his screams by a whole octave. Kacha-cha! Yang Kai slowly and methodically made his way up. In the blink of an eye, he broke the young man's right arm into 7 or 8 sections. It would have been one thing if only the bones had been broken, but the key point was that the meridians along the young man's arm had been destroyed completely as well. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4276. I said I won't kill you, so I won't kill you. It started with one of the young man's arms being crushed. Then it was his second arm, followed by both his legs. The continuous sound of bones breaking was extremely disturbing. The fear and despair in his eyes grew stronger and stronger, but his screams slowly grew weaker and weaker. He became breathless instead. The entire process took no more than a half cup of tea's time. In that time, all the bones in his body had been crushed to pieces, and all the meridians in his body were destroyed. This kind of pain was not something ordinary people could withstand. The most important point was that he could clearly feel the traces and movements of each bone when they were broken. What horrified him even more was Yang Kai's expression, which remained completely calm and indifferent, almost cold and meticulous, making him look like he was handling something very serious. "Please kill me," the young man murmured with lifeless eyes. "Kill me." It didn't matter if all his bones were broken. With his cultivation, he only needed to recuperate for 3 to 5 years, and consume some spirit pills to recover from even such major injuries. However, there was no way to recover once his meridians had been destroyed. Even if he could heal all the broken bones in his body, he would only be a cripple in the future. He could never cultivate again. For a cultivator, It was a fate worse than death. There was no crueler fate than that. Won't killing you be going too easy on you? Yang Kai stood up and looked down on this person contemptuously, his expression still as calm as ever. I'm a man who means what he says. I said I won't kill you, so I won't kill you. After that, he took off the young man's space ring and retrieved the space rings from the others. Turning around, he walked back to Chu Huashang. Chu Huashang was in shock. It was her first time seeing Yang Kai acting so cruel. He had always given her the impression of a mild-tempered man. At the very least, he was warm and gentle with her. Be that as it may, his current actions could only be described as cruel and ruthless. It was true that he had not killed the young man from Heavenly Sword Union, but this fate was more despairing than death. Just who is this woman? She lowered her head to look at Zhang Ruoxi, who she was carrying in her arms. I can't believe seeing her hurt made Yang Kai so furious. Although she did not know the answer to her question, Chu Huashang could be certain that he had a close relationship with this young woman. How is Ruoxi? Yang Kai came to Chu Huashang and placed 2 fingers on the young woman's wrist to probe her condition while asking. After a while he breathed a sigh of relief. She was heavily injured, but her injuries had not damaged her foundation. Hence, she would recover fully after recuperating for some time. Many thanks for your life-saving grace, senior brother. A voice came from the side suddenly. It was the man who had been fleeing alongside Zhang Ruoxi earlier. Seeing that his pursuers were gone, he returned and thanked Yang Kai. Yang Kai turned to look in that direction, and his originally gentle gaze instantly turned frosty. What happened earlier had not escaped his notice. Both this person and Zhang Ruoxi were being pursued just now. It was bad enough that he had not protected her. When an attack came from behind, it was only she who turned around to defend. On the other hand, he had taken the opportunity to flee even faster. He didn't even bother to look back to see what had happened to her. It was one thing if they did not know each other. However, they had been escaping together, so how could they be unrelated to one another? How could Yang Kai have any good impression towards a person like that? Even Chu Huashang looked at this man with an expression of disgust. Sir, this is my senior brother Du Su. Zhang Ruoxi introduced weakly. Why would Yang Kai care to know that person's name? He simply shouted, "Scram!" Du Su originally had a smile on his face, but when he heard Yang Kai telling him to get lost, his expression suddenly became incredibly awkward. He said falteringly, "Senior brother, why must you be so hurtful with your words? Although you rescued my junior sister and I, we are still from Langya Paradise. It's a disgrace to Langya Paradise for having a disciple like you. Get lost." Du Su's face flushed red in embarrassment, and then he became angry out of shame. It looked like he wanted to say something back, but he did not dare to speak the words that were on the tip of his tongue when he recalled the strength and brutality Yang Kai displayed earlier. In the end, he could only glance at Zhang Ruoxi angrily before he turned to leave. Chu Huashang watched that person's back and frowned. Is that person really from Langya Paradise? He is a disciple of one of the 72 paradises. How could he act like that? Lowering her head, she asked Zhang Ruoxi, "Are you also from Langya Paradise?" Zhang Ruoxi replied, "Yes. Senior brother Du and I might belong to Langya Paradise, but we are just inner disciples." Chu Huashang understood. Most sects divided their disciples into 3 grades. The first were the outer disciples. They had the lowest status and worst potential. Next came the inner disciples. They had much better aptitudes and potential. The strongest among the disciples were the core disciples, or legacy disciples. These talents were the future hope and pillars of the major sects. Both Chu Huashang and Gu Pan were core disciples while Zhang Ruoxi and that man called Du Su were inner disciples. Legacy disciples and core disciples were the smallest in number. Generally, only the cultivators who could condense 6th-order elements were qualified to be chosen. Even among the major cave heavens and paradises, each sect did not have more than a dozen legacy or core disciples. Nevertheless, it was hard to say how many out of this dozen or so people would succeed and advance into the open heaven realm, and how many would fall. Upon knowing that they were from Langya Paradise, Chu Huashang became even more curious. Heavenly Sword Union might be relatively powerful, but they wouldn't dare to provoke Langya Paradise. Why did those people pursue you so doggedly just now? Zhang Ruo, she said. We accidentally discovered a medicine garden earlier. It seemed to be one created by Blood Monster Divine Monarch. We found many valuable herbs, so those people were blinded by their greed. Yang Kai immediately snorted coldly. Men die for wealth. As long as the people from Heavenly Sword Union could kill Zhang Ruoxi and Du Su, who would know that they had attacked people from Langya Paradise, this matter would not be exposed. If Zhang Ruoxi and Du Su had not met Yang Kai here, they would certainly be facing a bleak future. What Zhang Ruoxi never expected was that Du Su would be so unreliable. He had been very eager to flirt with her, and constantly displayed his affection when they were at Langya Paradise. His usual demeanor was also rather upright. Although she had explicitly rejected him on numerous occasions, he had continued to persevere. Afterwards, they happened to encounter each other in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. Considering the dangers of this place, she decided to travel together with him. It had made him very happy, so he had been extremely diligent in every way. Even so, he turned out to be as timid as a mouse when faced with a crisis. With their strength, they would not have been able to kill those people from Heavenly Sword Union, even if they fought back with everything they had. But their enemies would also have suffered greatly as a result. The best chance at surviving would have been if they could scare their opponents off. However, Du Su chose to escape without even trying to fight, leaving Zhang Ruoxi no choice but to escape with him. In the end, it turned into the situation Yang Kai had witnessed earlier. Ruoxi, the top priority is treating your wounds. We can talk about the rest later, Yang Kai said. Zhang Ruoxi gave a non-committal grunt in response. He took her from Chu Huashang's arms and placed her into the small sealed world without another word. Then he called out to Chu Huashang, "Let's go, senior sister." The two of them continued on their journey while the cries of the young man from Heavenly Sword Union came from behind them as he begged in despair. "Please kill me." There were no traces of other cultivators along their journey, and they did not see many traces of monster beast activity either. Many of the cultivators were in possession of a map sold by Red Cloud's auction house. Naturally, they moved forward by relying on the directions of the map. It was not surprising that their journey was calm, since they were traveling the path that others had traveled earlier. This only happened because Yang Kai and Chu Huashang had encountered too many hardships along their way, which delayed their travels. Otherwise, they would not have fallen behind the others. After traveling for 2 days, Yang Kai's expression suddenly changed, and he immersed his mind into the small sealed world. He might have been traveling all this while, but he had always kept an eye on Zhang Ruoxi's condition inside the small sealed world. Just now, she had called for him. Sending his soul avatar inside, Yang Kai stood in front of Zhang Ruoxi. She smiled slightly and said delightedly, "I knew you would come to the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, sir." Yang Kai was surprised and asked, "Did you come here just to look for me?" And, blinking, she continued, "Hasn't sir been looking for me all this while as well? Senior sister Gu told me everything. She said that you once sought her out in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary to ask about me. Gu Pan came to look for you." Upon further consideration, Yang Kai understood the situation. He had asked Gu Pan for information on Zhang Ruoxi back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. At the time, she said she had never heard of the name Zhang Ruoxi before. It was not until she returned to Langya Paradise that she deliberately went around inquiring for information. That was how she found Zhang Ruoxi. "Senior sister Gu has taken great care of me. I would not have been able to become an inner disciple if not for her. Then, I'll have to thank her properly next time." Yang Kai nodded lightly. The image of a petite young girl with a paintbrush in hand, eating dried fish with her head lowered slightly involuntarily flashed through his mind. Sitting cross-legged opposite Zhang Ruoxi, Yang Kai looked at her and grinned. "I'm glad. Although it has been years since we've last met, you've not gotten thinner. Good, very good." She blushed beet red. "Sir, are you calling me fat?" "Of course not. You're perfect the way you are right now. You're neither fat nor thin. Yang Kai chuckled. By the way, did you go straight to Langya Paradise after we parted ways back then? She nodded. That's right. I couldn't find Sir. However, I knew you knew that my ancestor came from Langya Paradise. I believed that you would surely look for me there, so I went there. Zhang Rua, she had not been very strong at the time. Moreover, she had to wander the 3,000 worlds alone. How difficult had it been for her to go to Langya Paradise? It was fortunate that she had some of her ancestors' memories and knew quite a lot about the outer universe. Otherwise, a lone girl like her would have been devoured cleanly by others. Even so, the journey had taken her more than 10 years. It was not until several years ago that she finally arrived at Langya Paradise. Joining Langya Paradise was not difficult. Her ancestor had been a Langya Paradise disciple after all, so she received some preferential treatment. Besides, her own aptitude was not poor. Langya Paradise was also happy to accept a disciple like her. It was just that it had not been easy to survive in Langya Paradise. That place was one of the 72 paradises, so although it had a grand reputation, it was still a large sect. It was not easy to stand out among the countless disciples. Zhang Rua, she had crawled her way through the lower levels and finally borrowed Gu Pan's help before she successfully became an inner disciple. Be that as it may, she did not tell Yang Kai about these matters. The hardships she went through in the past were not worth mentioning. Meeting her Sir once more in this vast universe was the greatest gift from the heavens she could ask for. Yang Kai nodded. I guessed as much. I wanted to head to Langya Paradise, but I was held up by some other things. After he came out from the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, he had wanted to go to Langya Paradise to look for Zhang Ruaxi. It was just that he later obtained Void Land and the root from the World Tree, so he had to hurriedly return to the Star Boundary instead. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4277, You actually have the guts to come here. After Zhang Ruaxi finished her story, she asked Yang Kai about what he had encountered over the years. Yang Kai did not conceal anything from her. He told her that he had been lured to a place called Seven Wonders Land, where he served as a worker for some time, following their separation. Later, he took the opportunity to escape when an incident arose and inadvertently joined First In. Afterwards, he wandered into the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Zhang Ruaxi's eyes filled with pleasant surprise upon learning that he had gone back to the Star Boundary and repaired the Shattered World principles. She was different from him in the sense that she was truly born and raised in the Star Boundary. Therefore, she held a special affection for that world. When the world principles shattered, and the Star Boundary was on the brink of collapse, she too had hoped to find a method to restore the world one day. Nevertheless, she knew that it was bound to be an extremely long and difficult process. Contrary to her expectations, Yang Kai had succeeded in such a short time. Sir is really amazing. He is capable of performing feats that ordinary people can never hope to achieve. If I think back to everything he has done in the past, which of those feats were something an ordinary cultivator could have done? When she learned that he had acquired a spirit province in the 3,000 worlds, established Void Land, and brought several 100,000 people from the Star Boundary there, her admiration for him grew stronger and stronger. Over the past few years, she had cultivated extremely hard just to become one of Langya Paradise's inner disciples. On the other hand, Yang Kai had founded a sect in the outer universe. The gap between them was apparent at a glance. She had condensed the fifth-order elements. Since entering the outer universe, she had spent most of her time journeying to Langya Paradise. She did not have any means to earn resources either. Therefore, it could be said that she achieved nothing for the past decade. Her strength had not grown by much either. It wasn't until she entered Langya Paradise that her circumstances changed for the better. Disciples from any sect had to obtain their own cultivation resources through hard work, meaning it was impossible for them to receive anything without effort. For that reason, Zhang Ruaxi had no resources available for use even after she joined Langya Paradise. After all, she was only an insignificant outer disciple at the beginning. That might be the reason why many disciples of various sects had such slow progress in their cultivation. They often had to perform various tasks for years, decades, or even longer just to build up enough merits to exchange for necessary cultivation resources. When they finished consuming these resources, they would have to continue completing tasks until they could gather all of the required open heaven element powers. If they had a sufficient supply of resources, then their speed of cultivation would surely increase significantly. After Gu Pan returned from the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, she sought out Zhang Ruoxi, checked her aptitude, and gave her some fifth-order materials. It was only then that Zhang Ruoxi finally began cultivating for real. Gu Pan was one of Langya Paradise's core disciples. Although she had condensed sixth-order elements, even she could not obtain sixth-order materials at will. After all, each sixth-order material was worth 10 or 20 million open heaven pills. These resources were treated as strategic reserves in any sect, so it was impossible to obtain them casually. It was the limit just for her to acquire fifth-order materials. Senior Sister Gu has been very good to me. She told me that you helped her greatly in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Moreover, she said she would not have come out of the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary alive without Sir's help. Yang Kai smiled. She is a virtuous and upright woman. Pondering quietly for a moment, he continued. Do you want to start over again? I have some Tai soul cleansing water in my possession. It can wash away the powers in your Dao seal and allow you to condense new ones. There's no need to worry about the resources. I have quite a lot of them. Zhang Ruoxi shook her head at those words. No need, sir. I know my own limits. Even though I am capable of forcefully condensing sixth-order elements, I'm afraid I won't be able to survive the breakthrough to the open heaven realm. The consequence of failure was the destruction of her body. That was one of the problems that plagued countless cultivators. In order to advance into the open heaven realm, one of the problems the cultivators faced was obtaining resources. The higher the order of the material, the more expensive and difficult to obtain such resources became. The other problem was the carrying capacity of a cultivator's Dao seal. That was why cultivators would only choose resources within the range of their financial abilities and carrying capacities, regardless of who they were. While Zhang Ruoxi's aptitude was certainly not bad, it was not as good as Chu Huashang or Gu Pan's. It was undeniable that condensing sixth-order elements would be dangerous for her. However, Yang Kai had the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pills in his possession. The Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill was refined with world source liquid as its main ingredient and could significantly increase a cultivator's chances of entering the open heaven realm successfully. Therefore, Yang Kai believed that her risks of failure when advancing into the open heaven realm was not high even if she condensed sixth-order powers. But upon further consideration, Yang Kai realized that fifth-order elements were enough. Zhang Ruoxi could slowly cultivate until she reached the seventh-order open heaven realm one day. There was a risk even if she used the Tai soul cleansing water, so he decided to leave the decision to her. After telling her to get a good rest, Yang Kai withdrew his mind from the small sealed world. A few more days passed. Zhang Ruoxi was almost fully recovered at this point, so Yang Kai released her and properly introduced her to Chu Huashang. Only then did Zhang Ruoxi learn that the other party was a core disciple of Yinyang Cave Heaven. Her expression became a little weird when she looked at him. Needless to say, she had heard of the name Yinyang Cave Heaven. Chu Huashang and Yang Kai had been traveling together all by themselves. Not to mention that the way Chu Huashang looked at him and spoke to him were clearly suggestive. It was inevitable that Zhang Ruoxi would misunderstand. As they gradually moved forward, they began to come across traces of other cultivators. They also encountered the occasional fleeing monster beasts, and even found several battlefields. Yang Kai knew that they had finally caught up to the others after rushing to get here. Be that as it may, the gains he received inside the Blood Monster Cave Heaven were practically negligible. It was extremely depressing. Chu Huashang had obtained a 7th-order Monster Beast core at the Blood Lake, while he only obtained a 5th-order Monster Beast core. By contrast, He had acquired so many treasures back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary that he nearly couldn't carry them. Just as Yang Kai was wondering whether he had used up all his luck back in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, he suddenly noticed a large group of people gathering at a spot not too far ahead. Thus, he couldn't help feeling surprised. It had to be said that this place was located quite deep in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. It had far exceeded the range of the areas marked on the map. Throughout history, nobody had ever gotten this far since the Blood Monster Cave Heaven was first opened. It was rumored that the deeper one ventured into the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, the greater the dangers became. However, their journey here had been completely unimpeded, without the slightest hint of danger. It was not just Yang Kai's group who managed to get this far. There were also many others who had gotten there before them. Hence, it was strange why these people were gathering in that direction. Curious, Yang Kai led Chu Huashang and Zhang Ruoxi over. It didn't take long before they arrived atop a crowded mountain. Yang Kai swept his gaze around and saw several acquaintances whom he once met in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. These people were bearers chosen by the divine spirits. In the end, it was only thanks to his help that they could leave the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary safely. When they parted ways, these people had left their respective faith tokens with Yang Kai, so that he could visit them at their sect when he had the time. They promised to provide him with the best hospitality they could offer. For that reason, many eyes immediately lit up upon seeing Yang Kai again. They quickly came forward and cupped their fists at him in greeting. Yang Kai returned the greeting, but before they could exchange pleasantries, he heard a furious roar. "Yang Kai, I can't believe you actually have the guts to come here." For some reason, listening to this voice enraged Yang Kai greatly. He looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a group of people flying over from another mountain with great fanfare. It was clear that this group of people had been resting over there, but came over after spotting him. The person in the lead was none other than Yin Xan Zhao of Xian Yuan Cave Heaven. Yin Xan Zhao and Yang Kai had a feud between them. Before the Blood Monster Cave Heaven opened, Yang Kai had stolen his entrance and almost caused him to lose out on this opportunity. Yin Xan Zhao later led a pair of his junior brothers to hunt Yang Kai down. There was no saying what would have happened if Yang Kai had not borrowed the strength of Golden Gorilla King and a monster beast wolf to escape their pursuit. It was only natural for these two sworn enemies to blaze with hatred now that they came face to face with each other. Yin Xan Zhao was surrounded by many people. However, what surprised Yang Kai slightly was that Pei Wenxian of Myriad Demons Heaven was among them. This guy didn't die. Yang Kai glanced at Pei Wenxian in astonishment. He recalled Black Crow Divine Monarch shooting a blood arrow at him, and Pei Wenxian no longer had an identity token to protect him. How did he survive? As expected of a disciple from a major sect, his heritage was indeed extraordinary. The sight of these two together caused Yang Kai's teeth to grind slightly. "Is he Yang Kai?" A handsome young man swept his eyes over him and asked. Martial Peak, Chapter 4278, Assistance. 4 cave heavens and 1 paradise. All of them wanted Yang Kai to die. These were only those who openly announced their intentions. There were even more who kept silent, but watched Yang Kai with great interest. Many gazes were fixed on his neck and heart, as though wondering which location was better to target should they make their move. A rough estimate indicated that there were as many as a dozen cave heavens and paradises, with approximately 20 to 30 other cultivators together with Pei Wenxian and Yin Xan Zhao in the lead. These people were the elite core disciples of the various cave heavens and paradises, and had condensed fifth-order open heaven realm elements at the very least. Even so, many amongst them had condensed sixth-order open heaven realm powers. It could be said that the most excellent and talented cultivators in the younger generation of the 3,000 worlds were gathered here. One day, the cultivators in this place who managed to advance into the open heaven realm would surely become powerful great experts who ruled over the world. The audience was horrified as many people looked over from the mountains in the vicinity. They did not know who Yang Kai was, or how he managed to provoke so many cave heavens and paradises, that so many people hated him and wanted to take his life. On the mountain where Yang Kai was standing, the expressions of the cultivators who came over and greeted him earlier became very solemn. They only came to greet him because they received his help back in the grand ancient ruins boundary. Who could have known that they would be mixed up in this mess as a result? They were not ungrateful people who did not know how to repay their debts, and a life-saving debt was heavier than a mountain. It was only natural that they paid him back in full. It was just that each of them was a representative of their respective sect. If they got caught up in Yang Kai's mess, there was a high chance that their actions would also affect the force behind them. Thus, they hesitated to take action. Yi Cheng of Azure Nether Paradise gave a small smile and looked at Yang Kai with a warm expression. I've long heard of you, Brother Yang. After meeting you today, I can see that you are worthy of your reputation. It's a pity that I can't chat with you, Brother Yang. It truly makes me sigh with regret. Xian Zhao coldly snorted. Why are you spewing so much nonsense? Let's attack him all together. His head will belong to whomever manages to kill him. Pei Wenxian smiled deviously. In that case, all of you should stand aside. I'll be the one to kill him. If not for the fact that he had some means to protect himself, he would have died a long time ago, due to Yang Kai's schemes. Therefore, he was holding a rather heavy grudge. Outsiders, step back. Otherwise, you will be killed without mercy. Another person shouted. It was unknown which cave heaven or paradise he came from, but the aura around him was impressive. Yang Kai had arrived here late. So many people had gathered around on the mountains. Some had quietly escaped after seeing that a conflict was about to break out. And at this moment, even more people retreated after hearing this person's warning. These cultivators quickly scattered into the distance in an instant, like swallows leaving their nests. On the other hand, the cultivators who came over to greet Yang Kai earlier were looking very troubled. A long while passed before one of them cupped his fist and said, I'm sorry, Brother Yang. With a heavy sigh he turned and left. It was true that he received a huge favor from Yang Kai in the grand ancient ruins boundary. Nevertheless, he had no intention of making enemies with so many cave heavens and paradises. There was a high possibility that not only would he die in this place, but he would also bring trouble to his sect. Martial Peak, Chapter 4279 Cloud-Piercing Arrow. After pondering for some time, Xian Zhao finally spoke up. Senior brothers, the 36 cave heavens and 72 paradises have always been intricately linked and connected since ancient times. Why damage our relations for this? I ask that you retreat as a favor to this Yin. Wei Bouquet smiled. What if I refuse to retreat? Xian Zhao replied grimly. Although you are talented people, senior brothers, you are few in numbers. If it really came down to a fight, are you sure you can protect that bastard surnamed Yang? Wei Bouquet frowned slightly. As one of Divine Cauldron Heaven's core disciples, he did not fear these people. But if it really came down to a fight, the opposing side only needed to send somebody to keep him busy. The same held true for the others. It could be said that the opposing party would only need to send out a small group of people to distract them, while the others continue to besiege Yang Kai. Even if Yang Kai is extremely powerful, it will be hard for him to survive this calamity. The best outcome at the moment is if he escapes immediately. But he turned to look at Yang Kai and saw that the latter was perfectly calm. Despite being watched by so many great talents of the same generation, Yang Kai showed not the slightest hint of fear. He has no intention of escaping. Truly admirable. Wei Bouquet had heard about Yang Kai from Suzhen, so he knew that he was very strong. It was just that he had never seen Yang Kai in action before. He did not believe that Yang Kai could turn the current situation around all on his own. If it comes down to a fight, I'm afraid things will end badly for Yang Kai. You want to compete with numbers? A furious roar rang out. Do you think nobody from First In is here? Following the appearance of that voice, a chubby fatty ran over from a great distance. He had a kitchen knife in his hand and an apron tied around his waist. The apron was covered in grease stains, and the word butcher was written in large characters across it. He looked like a chef who just came right out of a kitchen. And it really was none other than the chef. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. I can't believe Chef is here too. Chef rushed over aggressively, the fats on his face jiggling with every movement as he called out. Don't worry, brat. Just see what I can do. Then he raised his hand and shot out an arrow into the sky. A sharp piercing sound entered their ears. He shouted vigorously, one cloud-piercing arrow calling upon 1,000-man army. He did not summon thousands of troops, of course. Be that as it may, the accountant, Lang Qing-shan, and the others quickly appeared right behind him. When the entrances to the Blood Monster Cave Heaven first appeared, Yang Kai had stolen many of Xian Yuan Cave Heaven's entrances and sent his subordinates into the Blood Monster Cave Heaven instead. After Yang Kai entered the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, he parted ways with the rest of them. The people gathered in this place were not many. There were only 10 or so of them. Another 10 or so were nowhere to be seen. They were probably not in the vicinity. The Blood Monster Cave Heaven covered a vast area after all. Not everybody would travel in this direction. The accountant glanced sideways at Yang Kai through his triangular eyes and muttered under his breath. Brat, why do you have to cause trouble wherever you go? Yang Kai said, It's not that I like to cause trouble. On the contrary, trouble likes to come knocking on my door. What can I do? The accountant gave those words some serious thought and nodded. I can't blame you for that. Brother Yang, is that you? What a coincidence. A pleasantly surprised voice rang out. Immediately after that, a person emerged from the crowd. He was followed by a large group that numbered around 40 or 50 people.